Hi, neighbors. So good to be with you today. I want to welcome all of our neighbors at our Woodbury campus, our Eagan campus, our Hastings campus, our Cottage Grove campus. It's good to be with you. It is week 3 of our teaching series called Won't You Be My Neighbor? And we decided to go with this theme, not because of the documentary on the life of Mr. Rogers that's out right now. It's awesome. But we decided to go with this theme because Jesus' strategy for changing the world is summed up in 5 words right here. Love your neighbor as yourself. Love your neighbor as yourself. Jesus knew something. Jesus knew that the way to change the world was not through our logic, not through our arguments, not through force, not through power, not through might, not through persuasion. Jesus knew that the key to changing this world is love. Love always wins the day. And I believe so strongly that if we would do that, if every follower of Jesus would simply love their neighbor as they love themselves, I believe our world would change. It would change. And so we've been talking about that. What does that mean? What does it mean to love our neighbors as we love ourselves in this series? And we've learned thus far, we've learned that it starts with a yes. It takes a yes. You and I, we have to say yes at some point. We have been blessed. Not just to be blessed, we've been blessed to be a blessing to the world. And at some point, we've got to realize that I am on this planet to bring a blessing to other people. And so at some point, I got to put my hand up, and you got to put your hand up and say, okay, God, use me. Use me, God. I want to be used by you to be a change agent in this world. We've been talking about taking a step, saying yes, taking a step. To allow God to use us, a step across the lawn or a step across the street or a step down the hall or just a step and say, okay, God, use me. It also, we know this, it involves prayer. Nothing happens without prayer. Prayer is the thing that unlocks the power of God, and we know we have to start praying for the people in our lives who need Jesus. The people who are far, far, far from God, the people who are in need of His touch, His grace, His mercy, His love, His compassion. We start lifting them up and saying, God, use me to somehow touch this person's life and lead them one step closer to you. And today, what we're going to talk about is like, wow, yeah, you're really talking about that today? Yeah, we're going to talk about something that you're actually going to probably enjoy doing. I know many times when we have messages or sermons, we get to the end and we ask you to do something, and many times you're like, I don't want to do that. Maybe it's a message on giving money, and you're like, I don't want to do that. I don't have enough for myself. Or we give a message on serving, rolling up your sleeves and getting involved in some ministry, and many of you go, I don't have time for that. We talk about forgiving other people, and we get to the end of the message, we say, okay, now go out and let go of, forgive that person who's hurt you. And many of you are going like, I don't want to do that. I want to get back at them. I want to get revenge on it. I don't want to let go of them. And I get it. I really do. I really, really, really get it. But today, we're going to talk about something, throw out a challenge to you. I think many of you are going to go, I'm in on that. In fact, many of you, all of you, have already done this today. In fact, many of you would go on record to say that you're really, 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 really good at doing this. And so what is today's topic? In one word, eating. You get to hear a sermon today about eating. Yeah, and somebody was leaving the last service, and they said, you should have had food trucks at all the campuses today. You should have brought carts of food in for it. I'm all for that. In fact, I'm all about having food every service. But anyway, we're going to talk about eating, something we don't talk about very often. But isn't it interesting that in the accounts of the life and teachings of Jesus, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they record very often Jesus having meals with people. Because something happened. Something happened every time Jesus sat down and had a meal with other people. Something happened. Jesus' meals were legendary. And Jesus' meals were revolutionary. And we talk a lot about Jesus' teaching. We talk a lot about Jesus' miracles, all good. But we very rarely talk about Jesus' eating with other people. And I'll say it again. We need to, because lives were changed. Something profound, something extraordinary happened as Jesus broke bread with other people. Could it be, think about this, Could it be that the key to your neighbor's heart, could it be the key to my neighbor's heart, could it be that the key is going to come through their stomach? Could it be that it's not your well-reasoned arguments for God, but it's the brats and the burgers you put on the grill that are going to move people closer and closer and closer to God? Could it be? Could it be that we're missing something here by not talking about eating enough? Let me just tell you something that's true about your neighbor. I don't know where you live, what neighborhood you live in, whether you're in Woodbury or Cottage Grove or Eagan or Hastings or St. Paul or Minneapolis. It doesn't matter where you're from. Here's the truth about your neighbors, and here's the truth about my neighbors. 80% of them did not get out of bed and put clothes on and go to church. 80% of your neighbors are not doing what you're doing right now. They're not sitting in a church building somewhere. 80%. Your neighbors and my neighbors, they're unchurched, they're de-churched, and many of them are anti-church. Church is not even on their radar. 80% of them. That's the bad news. The good news, you want to hear good news? The good news is 100% of them are pro-food. 100% of your neighbors and 100% of my neighbors, they like to eat. They like to eat. So today, this message is all about eating. How many of you have eaten in the last 7 days? Can I see your hands? You've eaten in the last 7 days. All right, hands. All right, some of you are fasting. Very, very good. How many of you would even say, you'd go as far to say, you're pretty doggone good at eating? Can I see your hand? Mine's up. I have 2 hands up on that one. I love eating. So we're going to talk about eating today. We're going to talk about eating. Today is all about strategic suppers. Today is all about deliberate dining. Today's message is brought to you by our friends at Cub Foods and Hy-Vee and Jerry's and Kowalski's. Actually, that's not true. Today's message is brought to you by the gospel according to Mark. So we're going to invite you right now to grab a Bible and turn with me to Mark's gospel. Mark was one of the biographers of the life of Jesus. And he's writing this in about 55 AD or so, 20 years or so after Jesus was crucified and resurrected. And we're going to turn to Mark chapter 2. And when you get to Mark chapter 2, go all the way down to verse 13. We're going to pick up the story. One of these legendary, remarkable, extraordinary meals of Jesus. Let's get right to it. Here it is. Then Jesus went out to the lakeshore again and taught the crowds that were coming to him. As he walked along, he saw Levi, son of Alphaeus, sitting in his tax collector's booth. "Follow me and be my disciple," Jesus said to him. So Levi got up and followed him. Now, if we just stop right here, what do? You yawn. You go, okay, well, that's interesting. So there's a guy named Levi. Okay, he's a tax collector, and he followed Jesus. Okay, good, Pastor Phil. What do you got? Well, let me just say that what just happened there in 21st century American culture, not a big deal. But when this happened back in 1st century Palestine, where Jesus was, this whole thing would have sent just shockwaves throughout the crowd. Because Jesus was a rabbi, a Jewish rabbi. Jesus was a holy man. He was a teacher of religious law. He came from God to represent God and to share God's word. And for Jesus, this holy man that he was, to actually invite a tax collector, to invite a guy by the name of Levi to come and be part of his clan, to become and be part of his club, to come and follow him and be one of his disciples. For that to happen, again, friends, this would have been shocking to people in the 1st century context. Because you may or may not know this, depending on whether you've been a church person or not, tax collectors in the 1st century world were at the very bottom rung of the spiritual ladder. I mean, they were like the spiritual, the bottom feeder, the moral bottom feeders of society. They were despicable people. Everybody hated them because they were actually Jews who sold out to the Romans. And they were Jewish people who collected taxes for the hated Romans. And the way it worked was, as long as Caesar got his share of the taxes, they didn't care how much these tax collectors pocketed for themselves. And that's why people like Levi, I mean, they were as crooked as corkscrews. Max Lucado, one of my favorite authors, says this about first century tax collectors. Combine the greed of an embezzling executive with the presumption of a hokey TV evangelist. Throw in the audacity of an ambulance-chasing lawyer and the cowardice of a drive-by sniper. It gets worse. Stir in a pinch of a pimp's morality and finish it off with the drug peddler's code of ethics. And what do you have? Here it is, a first century tax collector. Woo! There you go. And that, my friends, is who Jesus just called out to be part of his particular team. This is crazy that Levi, a tax collector, has been invited to be one of Jesus's homies. It's crazy, friends. Just so you know, Levi was the kind of guy that everybody left off the list when it came to like neighborhood get-togethers. When it came time for the 5, 10, 15, 20, 25-year class reunion, guess who was not invited? Levi. And if Levi would have sent you a friend request on Facebook, you would never have confirmed it. You would have hit the delete button like that. And yet it's Levi that Jesus calls to come and to follow him. And he does so. Let's pick up the story again. Later, this is just picture this. Later, Levi invited Jesus and his disciples to his home, as dinner guests, along with many tax collectors and other, look at this word, disreputable sinners. And I love how Mark adds this little parenthesis here. There were many people of this kind among Jesus' followers. Thanks, Mark. Thanks for telling us that, because that is important. That if you would have been in the first century right now and you would have looked at the crowds of people following Jesus, you'd have gone, oh my goodness, he's following him? Oh my goodness, she's following? I mean, the people at the very bottom of, again, the spiritual morality, religious ladder, I mean, the people, the bottom feeders of society, they're the ones that are following Jesus. And now all of a sudden, here it is, Levi, with all of his disreputable sinner friends, they're now going to host a party, and they've invited Jesus and his disciples to come and be part of that particular party. Can you just imagine the people that are going to show up? Can you imagine the party list? Can you just try to picture the people that were there? This is not your basic church potluck people here, all right? This is not your people who go to church. These are your people who swear like sailors and drink like fish. These are people who just, they're the people everybody kind of talks about, because they are not your basic spiritual types of people. And it's remarkable that Jesus and his disciples are invited to this party full of disreputable sinner people. And more remarkable is the fact that Jesus and his disciples show up. And look who else shows up. But when the teachers of religious law, when the teachers of religious law, who were Pharisees, saw him eating with tax collectors and other sinners, they asked his disciples, why does he eat with such, say this word with me, scum? Yeah, you've probably never said the word scum in church before. This is the question that these religious people are asking Jesus' disciples. Like, why in the world is Jesus, this man of God, Jesus, this rabbi, Jesus, supposedly this Messiah, why in the world is he eating with scum? Why? The Pharisees show up, and they're the moral police officers of the first century world. They're the God squad of the first century world. They're the ones whose clerical collars are so tight that the veins in their neck are bulging out, and they're shocked. They're shocked by the fact that Jesus is eating with these kind of people. You see, back in that day, who you ate with told a story. Back in that particular day, eating was a really, really big deal. eating stratified people, eating divided people, eating with people told everybody else who was in and who was out of your circle. And here's Jesus. What is he doing? Let me just sum it up as bluntly as I can. He is supping with scum. That's what the Pharisees are seeing. That's what these religious experts are seeing, and that's what they're saying. You see, they were Pharisees. And by the way, just so you know, that word Pharisee literally means separated ones, separated ones. And that's exactly how they lived their lives. Do you remember back like, let's just say 8th grade, when there was these like cooties? Remember cooties? Remember cooties, yeah? Where the boys, you know, they had cooties if you were a girl, and you know, for the girls, you know what it was. You wouldn't touch someone with cooties because you would get boy germs or you would get girl germs. Well, the Pharisees believed that there were spiritual cooties. They believed that if you got close to a sinner, a disreputable person, that their sin might rub off on you. And so what did they do? They kept their distance from any disreputable person. They stayed away from sinners. Their mentality was keep them over there somewhere and let them go to hell where they belong. But what they didn't understand is this whole thing of separating themselves from sinners. What it did was it removed them from the heart of God. What they didn't understand was that they couldn't have been further away from the heart of God by practicing this whole thing of separation. And this is where the story, again, it just kind of takes a very interesting little twist here. Let's go back to verse 17. When Jesus heard this, what they were saying, he told them, healthy people don't need a doctor. Sick people do. I have come, Jesus, let me make really clear here why I'm here. He says, I have come to this earth to call not those who think they are righteous, but those who know they are sinners. Think about that. Think about that. Healthy people, they don't need a doctor. Can you imagine tomorrow getting really sick? I hope you don't, by the way. But can you imagine tomorrow getting really, really sick and you call your doctor and the receptionist answers the phone and you know, you say, hey, I'd like to see Dr. Nelson. And then they ask you why, and you say, because I'm really, really sick. And can you imagine them saying these words to you? I'm sorry, but Dr. Nelson only sees people who are well. What? He's a doctor. Come on. I mean, can you imagine your doctor only seeing people who aren't sick? What kind of doctor would that be? And Jesus is saying, I have come not to hang out with you Pharisees. I've not come for you religious people. I've not come for you people who think you're righteous. I have come for the Levites of the world. I have come for people who know they're sinners and they know they are in need of God. And friends, this is something that we need to wrestle with today, I think. We need to understand that Jesus deliberately dined and he supped with the scum of the world, not because he liked sin, no, because he loved them. He hung out with all the wrong crowd for all the right reasons. Let me say that again, because your mama told you all your life to stay away from the wrong crowd, but Jesus hung out with the wrong crowd for all the right reasons, because they mattered to him. The Levites of the world were on his radar. He came to earth for the Levites of the world, and he made it very, very clear that his passionate priority was the sick, that he dedicated his life to helping people like Levi and helping people like me and helping people like you get well. And here's a question, and I've been wrestling with this ever since I studied this particular passage, because if you looked at the crowd that followed Jesus, if you look at who Jesus hung out with, if you look at the people that Jesus sat down at Starbucks or Caribou and Dunn Brothers with, you would have seen a different crowd of people. And so here's the question I've been asking myself. Are we more like Jesus or more like the Pharisees in who we hang out with? I know you want me to take this down because you don't like the question. We're just going to leave this up for a second. I want you just to take a breath right now and be honest about that question. Are we more like the Pharisees? Like, I'm going to stay away from all those sinful people over there? I don't want to get close to those people. Oh no, those guys. I don't get close to those people. Is that us? Are we that kind of person? Are we the kind of follower of Jesus that only hangs out with people that fit our little holy huddle? We go from this group of Christian friends to that group of Christian friends to this group of friends over here, and we bounce from holy huddle to holy huddle to holy huddle, all the while, all the Simons, all the Levis of the world, they're all out there. We know they're out there, and we'll say, oh yeah, love them, but we don't get anywhere near to them. We don't want to get close to them. Is that us? Is that me? Is that you? That's the question that I've been wrestling with lately. Like, who am I more like? Am I more like Jesus? Or am I more like the Pharisees? So easy for me, Want to go play tennis? Call my Christian buddy. Gonna go play golf? Call my Christian buddies. Want to go fishing? Call my Christian friends. I want to go, whatever, hang out at a coffee shop, Christian friends. And this is something I think we just need to step back with today. Would everybody look at me for just a moment? Can I just say this? There's nothing wrong with having Christian friends. I'm being honest. There's nothing wrong with hanging out with Christian people. I mean, who better understands you than your Christian friends if you're a follower of Jesus today? I'm not saying get rid of all your Christian friends. I'm saying if that's exclusively all the people we hang out with, then I think maybe God's trying to ring our bell today just a little bit. Don't get me wrong. Our neighbors, and I hope you hear this, our neighbors are not scum. Our neighbors are not disreputable people. Our neighbors are just like us. Our neighbors who are far from God are just like us. They, just like I need Jesus and just like you need Jesus, they need Jesus. They need His love. They need His mercy. They need His forgiveness. They need His grace. They need exactly what you've experienced if you're a follower of Jesus. That's what they need. But if we're only staying in our own little holy huddles, that's a problem. And that's the point I believe that Jesus is trying to make, and that's the point that I'm trying to make as well, that we need to open up our eyes and to begin to see people through a different lens, just like Jesus did. We need to start seeing people as Jesus saw people. So when I look at somebody, oh, there's a disreputable sinner. And I look at that person, oh, there's scum over there. And they're. No, that's not how Jesus looked at people. When Jesus looked at the Levites of the world, you know what He saw? He didn't see the layer of dirt that everybody else saw. You know what He saw? He saw someone who was created in the image of God. He saw someone who had worth and someone who had dignity. He saw someone who was not someone who was where they should be, but He saw where they could be if they would just open their lives up to God. That's what He saw. He saw potential. He saw them not as they were, but as they were created to be by the Father. And I'm just wondering today, do we see people that way? Do we see them as they're supposed to be, as God created them to be, or do we see them as they are? Our valuing system of people, we just need to confront it, I think. As I was thinking about this whole thing, I kind of put together my measuring system for people, and here it is. I'm just going to put you in this too, because I think this is how we are. If a person is successful, plus if they are a lot like us, plus if they are a good church-going person, then they matter to us, right? You talk about Kelley Blue Book, this is how we value people right here. If they're successful, if they're a lot like me, if they're a good church-going person, they're on my you matter list. And I just want to say, friends, that is so opposite of Jesus' measuring system, which was this. If they have a pulse, they matter. Yeah. For Jesus, if they had a pulse, they matter. It doesn't matter if they're black or white or any other color in between. They matter. It doesn't matter if they're pro-Trump or Trump haters. They matter. Democrat or Republican. They matter. Gay or straight. They matter. Christian or Muslim. they matter. Undocumented immigrant or citizen, they matter. Rich or poor, they matter. Vikings fan, or whatever the other one is, not here to judge. They matter. Could that be said about you and me? It doesn't matter where they're at, whatever that scale is, that they matter? That they matter to me? This is, I believe, what this whole thing comes down to. That we see people through a different lens. That we see people not as our culture values, our society values people, but we begin to adopt Jesus' value system into our lives. That if that person, that neighbor, that person across the street, or that person down the hallway, or that person in the cubicle next to you, if they have a pulse, they matter. Because that was true of Jesus. Everyone mattered. Everyone mattered. Everyone mattered. Everybody had a place at his table. And speaking of table, do you have a table? You know, that one of those wooden things, you know, where you sit around and you have meals. Do you have a table? Because if you have a table, you are set up, you are equipped to make a difference in this world. That's what I think this whole thing about Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John recording the meals of Jesus is really all about. Trying to tell us that something profound, something extraordinary happens when we actually sit down at a table with people who matter. That if we have a table and chairs, we're set up to make a difference in this world. Jesus did it so many times. He sat down with the Levites of the world, the scum of the world, the disreputable people. He did it so many times that the enemies of Jesus said this about Jesus. They said, he's a glutton and a drunkard and a friend of tax collectors and other sinners. Well, they got it partially right. Oh, he wasn't a drunkard and he wasn't a glutton, but you bet your bottom dollar he was a friend of tax collectors and sinners. Could that be said about you? And could that be said about me? Are we friends? Do we break bread with people? Do we realize that meals create opportunities to listen to others, to care about others, and to connect with other people who are in desperate need like we are of Jesus? You see, I think Jesus knew something far, far, far before the Pillsbury Doughboy understood this. Jesus knew that nothing says lovin' like something from the oven. Jesus knew that. Jesus coined that. And the Pillsbury people stole that from Jesus. And one of the things that, bothers me about 21st century American culture, one of the things is that we don't do that anymore. We don't put things in the oven. We barely sit down with our own families and have meals together. And we certainly, it's the lost art, isn't it? Of inviting people, neighbors over, people at work over, people who we know are in desperate need of Jesus. I mean, we just don't do this anymore, friends. We just don't have people over for meals. And it's so sad because we're missing these profound, these extraordinary opportunities to have their hearts opened up to Jesus. And you've got your excuses, and trust me, I've got mine. And at the very top of my list is probably in the very top of your list is who has time to do that? I mean, who has time even to get to know their neighbors' names? Who has time to clean their house? Who has time to go to the grocery store? Who has the time or the expertise even to cook a meal? I mean, come on. And those are my excuses, and those are probably your excuses, and I can just kind of picture Jesus right now. As we think about those excuses, I can just picture Jesus right now saying, oh, come on, gang. Come on. You can do this. Come on, gang. You're better than that. You've got this. You've got this. You can do this. You eat, they eat, so just eat together. That's what Jesus is saying today. I think so often we think we've got to get on an airplane and go on some Crossroads missions trip to make a difference in this world. And by the way, I hope you'll do that someday. I mean, that's amazing to do that, but I think what we're not seeing is you don't have to get on an airplane to make a difference in someone's life. Just have them over for a meal. Because when you have someone over for a meal, in 21st century America, where that doesn't happen, they are going to sit up and go, whoa. Because when you have someone over for a meal into your home, you know what that communicates to them? That they matter. That they matter. Because you took the time and the effort to clean up the house a little bit. And you took the time and the effort to go over to Cub or Hy-Vee, or you went to Kowalski, or you went to Jerry's, and you bought an already cooked chicken, and you brought it home. They're good. That communicates to the neighbors that you invite over that they matter to you. And I'm here to tell you, if you hear nothing else I've said, I want you to hear this. Your neighbors who are far from God will never ever believe when you say to them, you matter to God, until they believe that they matter to you. Until they know that they matter to you, they will never believe that they matter to God. And that's why, as we bring week 3 of Won't You Be My Neighbor to a landing, we're going to go to another action step. We're to bless the world, right? We've been blessed to be a blessing, and so we're taking this word blessed. And the E today stands for, you already know, eat together. Eat together. Whatever those excuses are, push them aside. But Pastor Phil, I don't know what to talk about. I don't have all 66 books of the Bible memorized. I don't know how to, persuade someone about da-da-da. So time out. Your job is not to convert anybody. Your job is not to argue for the existence of God. You're not to explain whether creation happened in 7 literal days or 7 billion years. That's not your job. Your job is to make the most of this beautiful day and say to the people, won't you be my neighbor? Come on over. But throw some brats and burgers on the grill. Come on over. You eat, we eat, let's eat together. That's your job. It's just to be a good host. That's it. What do we talk about? Whatever. Talk about whatever. It doesn't matter. What matters is you show them that they matter by inviting them into your home. Because when you do that, friends, maybe for the very first time ever, they might begin to believe that they matter to God. So there's your assignment. Eat. Eat. That's it. Eat. Eat. And as you take that step of courage, believe that when we take little steps of courage, God does extraordinary things. All right? So let me pray. Jesus, we just want to say that we, as we are every weekend as we open up your word, we are so in awe of you. So in awe of your heart for people. And so our prayer today, Jesus, is that you'd give us eyes that are like your eyes. That as we see the people, the Levi's of the world, may we not write them off. May we not make a step away from them, but may we, like you, Jesus, may we make a beeline for them. May we see them through the layers of dirt and see the person that you've created them to be. And Jesus, would you also give us your heart? Would you give us your heart of courage? Would you give us your heart of compassion so that we might take that step across the lawn or that step across the road or that step down the hall and to make that connection with people who are in desperate need of you. So Jesus, thank you for showing us what it looks like, and may you use each one of us to make a difference in just one person's life. We pray together in your name. Amen.